Okay, today is going to be our last day on the client side for now. We'll come back to the client side towards the end of the semester when we talk about Ajax. But we've covered a lot of stuff on the client side. We're going to cover a couple more things. And depending on how fast that goes, we might start into the server side stuff today. I just have to see how it goes. First of all, Bootstrap. We talked about last time, and we talked about how we can use Bootstrap to how do we want to say this? Bootstrap to set the appearance of the page and do it in a responsive way. And we saw a few examples of that. What we're going to look at now is Bootstrap with the focus on sort of the JavaScript aspect of it. Last week, the focus was sort of on the CSS aspect of it. But now we're going to focus on the JavaScript aspect of it, where the Bootstrap code is going to influence the behavior of the page and allow us to get interactivity. If you remember, the main thing that we talked about when we talked about JavaScript is that JavaScript adds that interactivity to the page. And by interactivity, I mean you do something and the page does something in response. And it does that without reloading the page. That's like the important catch. So like clicking on a link is not interactive in this way. All right, it's a different kind of interaction. Because clicking on a link takes you to the web server again and getting back a brand new page. What we're talking about is functionality like mouse over. That would be the classic example, validation on a page, and those kinds of things that happen without the page reloading. So let's look at some of the examples we have here. Here's a Bootstrap 5 tutorial. This is in addition to the stuff that we covered last time. It's just putting together some of those things and showing you how you can do some basic things in Bootstrap. I'll leave that to you to read on your own. What I want to look at, though, is Bootstrap, one particular feature of a collapse of a window. And this is similar to what we did in an early JavaScript example. But notice that we don't have any JavaScript here, all right? There is JavaScript, but it's JavaScript written by Bootstrap. So if we look at this, we have this that we can show or hide. All right, and if you notice, we have our Bootstrap. This is a 5.3.3. We have the CSS and JavaScript built into it. We could actually view these files if you want. It's just a URL. And if you notice, it's just a bunch of text squashed together. Makes it very difficult to read. This is the minimized version. That's what the min means in this name. Yeah, I thought I got rid of something. This is the min. And what the min is it gets rid of all of the spaces and carriage returns and all that. So we're not going to go and change anything in the Bootstrap libraries. Therefore, it doesn't need to be readable by a human, right? It only needs to be readable by the browser, and the browser doesn't care about spacing or anything like that. The browser just follows the strict rules of syntax for CSS and JavaScript. If we wanted to see what the full version looks like with spaces in it so that we can read it, we could just eliminate the min part. And there we see code that is easier for us to decipher because things are broken down as we'd expect them to be and evenly, neatly spaced. So if we ever wanted to see something like that, you could, if you wanted to, theoretically download a copy and make changes to how Bootstrap behaves. The problem with that is if a new version of Bootstrap is enhanced, you would lose your changes. So it's best not to make changes to the Bootstrap code itself. But you can see it, and that can be useful if you're trying to debug why something is behaving in a certain way. All right. So let's look at this simple collapsible, show and hide. How do we achieve that? We've given a class on the div of collapse. Class on the div of collapse. And we've said on the button, the class is button and primary button, so it makes it look like this. Data-bs toggle, that's the behavior that we want to associate with this button, and that is collapse. And what do we want to collapse when we link this? We want to collapse this demo ID. So we do # demo. So we click on the button, that will toggle this ID. Let's say we had another one we wanted to do. Probably want the same thing for this up into this. We would want to collapse. The target of our behavior is demo 2. So we would make the ID of this demo 2. And then we're toggling that. Here we're toggling this. Style's a little bit different. It's not part of that container. This down. We can toggle show or hide it. So what we did on one of the assignments, or maybe it wasn't an assignment, maybe it was the example, the spoilers example, we could code that to do it this way. And that would be a good exercise for you. Take that spoiler example from earlier on and recode it this way. Now you might ask, why did we learn this way first? Well, we wanted to get the fundamentals of JavaScript down first so that you understood sort of it on a nuts and bolts level, because there's not always going to be pre-written functionality for everything that you want to do. So therefore, we need to learn how to do stuff ourselves, and then we can look at the pre-written ones. Why would you use this instead? This does it in a consistent manner. It's been debugged, tested, and you may do a great job testing, but my thought would be that this has been tested much more thoroughly than any code that you would ever write. Therefore, and it does it in a consistent manner, all right? And it does it in a responsive manner. So I would suggest, that you can use this instead of your own code for this sort of functionality. Another thing that we have here is an accordion view. And here's a video that I urge you to watch about the accordion view. Short little video.
So the accordions are a new component in Bootstrap 5, and they're essentially a way to collapse or
Okay. I'll give my explanation and then you can watch the video, and hopefully between the two, you understand it pretty well. Well, this is in W3 School, so let's copy this and create our own web page. It won't be a complete web page, so don't turn me over to the web page police. So if we look at this, I have to at least add the bootstrap stuff onto it. They're going to get why it didn't work the first time. It didn't work the first time because I did not include the links to the Bootstrap, CSS, and JavaScript. So now I went and I just pasted it from the other example, and now it should work the way I want it to. Okay, this is what I mean by an accordion, and I don't know if this is a good example or not, but if you click on, if accordion is a good name, it essentially works on it as a toggle, but a little bit more. If I click on it, then click this again, it toggles it. If I click it and click on another one, it shows the second one and hides the first one, and so on. So this is functionality that again can be very effective. Anything like this, like the tabs that we looked at earlier in this course, or this is a good way to take and present a fair amount of information on a page without taking up too much space. A great example of that is what we did in going back to the very first lab, where we had a page with information about JavaScript, a page with information, or a section with information about JavaScript, a section with information about PHP, and a section for Ajax. If you had all that on a single page, that could be overwhelming and cause a lot of scrolling and so on. Where with this, it allows you to see one of them at a time. So let's look at how this is accomplished. Well, first of all, we need this in there. We need both the CSS and the JavaScript. What if we don't have the CSS? What happens? Work. I was curious if it would work, just look differently. Bottom line is we need both the CSS and the JavaScript for this to work. If we don't have the JavaScript, it's definitely not going to work. So we have a div with a class of accordion. Let's indent this properly. This is our class accordion, and it surrounds all our little sections. And we have our end div over here. Each section has a class of accordion item. Let's highlight. Highlighting here. Class of accordion item. That goes around everything. That goes around the header and the HTML that we want in the accordion item. So it goes from here to include line 13. Go. Here to here. So the accordion item is the thing that's going to get collapsed and uncollapsed. All right. First thing that we have is we have an H2, which is the heading or accordion header. So when we initially go to the page, we show all the accordion headers. And the one that's active, notice how it's styled a little bit differently. So when we initially go to the page, the first accordion item is shown, along with not just the header, but the paragraph or whatever makes up the body of that accordion item. Each other accordion item, only the header is shown. As we click on the different buttons, it's going to collapse anything that's showing and make the new one, and it's going to toggle the one that we click on. If I click on this, all right, that's another accordion item. H2 is the accordion header. That always shows. So accordion item 2 always shows. Accordion item 3 always shows. As we click on it, though, we toggle this guy, the body of it. And as we click around, we toggle and show the respective sections of the page. Pretty straightforward. Let's go back to the example and see that there are options. With this one, with this option, we add accordion flush as a class here. And remember, things can have two classes. So we can say it's accordion and accordion flush. And what does the accordion flush do? It gets rid of the default background color, some borders and some rounded corners to render edge with render accordion edge to edge with their parent container. That's slightly different than this one. Might not be immediately apparent on this, but let's go and do this here and let's see if we can tell the difference. I'm going to put a section tag up here. And I'm going to do something that I almost never do in class. And that is I'm going to put inline style. You can do this, but usually we don't want to. We don't want to because we want our styles to be typically in the CSS file. But because this is just a quick example and I don't want to bother creating a CSS file, I'm going to say so this is with accordion flush. Notice how it extends from edge to edge of the container. So it's flush with the container. So that's 600 pixels wide. All these accordion headers and all that are 600. Let's see if I remove that. According to this, it's going to look different. Let's see exactly how different it looks. I'm going to open up another copy of it so we can see them side by side. Only difference I notice is that this is like a curved margin or curved border here. So I guess in this example, it really didn't make too much of a difference. But more important than the specific thing is the fact that we have options on these. This allows us to keep things open when we click on them. So in other words, I can collapse or make this bigger, but when I click this, normally accordion item 1 would disappear, but here it keeps it open until we explicitly close it. And they did that by putting in data vs parent attribute on each accordion collapse. Kind of hard to see, but Actually, it's hard to read in this. I'm going to go copy this. Put it on the bottom of this one. Kept it open. And the property that they had on this was stay open, apps 1. It's a show attribute. Oh no, that show is where it will initially show it. Or here, looking for omit the DS parent attribute. That's why I didn't see it. So on the accordion body, we don't have the DS parent where we do have that in the original one. Yeah, there we go. So by adding or removing properties, we can make this behave different ways. They have a whole list of other things that you can do with this. Now, it's not as though I'm in love with the accordion, all right? Granted, a lot of my childhood was watching polka varieties on TV, you know, right before the Browns games would play. So I do have that in my heritage, but it's not that I'm in love with the accordion, but we can't go over all of the different controls. So the accordion seems like a good one to pick because it's nice, it's easy, and you've done something similar to that already. Let's look at some of the other things that exist in addition to the accordions. We can control alerts. Shows you how to do that. We can control badges. Control buttons. Shows the examples. Button groups. We want to group buttons together. So you see this allows us to put them so they're not really separated. They look like sections on they're not, they look more like, it's more obvious that these are 3 choices that are grouped together. Hard? On many sites, you see little cards like this. In fact, if we go to Canvas, I'm not saying they use Bootstrap for this, but each of these would be a card. All right, that's what we mean by a card. And this in Bootstrap allows us to create those. Here's a good one, a carousel. Click through and get a little slideshow going. So before you go and you write code for something, especially if it's code that is, fairly common, code that you've seen around on websites, like you probably have all seen image carousels on websites. You might not know the name for it, but you have seen this slideshow kind of thing. Sometimes they're also called. Look to see if there's something in Bootstrap that allows you to accomplish that more quickly. And they have, for all of these things, they have examples of it, of how you can change it. You need a little spinner. You can do that on your page. Breadcrumb. You can style in a certain way to make your pages look like that. That's a very useful tool in navigation to let people to know where they are within the structure of your website. If we go to LC's website, we went from home to academic programs. We could go to program career pathways, program career pathways. That's a good navigation thing because it told you how you got there. All right, so that's very valuable in navigation. Especially if you get nested several pages deep. So you can go up to the parent page, or you can go up to the parent's parent page, or whatever. Okay, I guess my point is that there's a lot of useful components in a Bootstrap that include both appearance and behavior. So take the time to explore those as you're creating a site if you're using Bootstrap. All right, that's topic 1 for today. Topic 2 for today is jQuery. Now, jQuery provides a similar role, but done in a different way with JavaScript. And let me pull down a jQuery example, then we'll look at a jQuery tutorial. jQuery is a library that's built on top of JavaScript. It provides you shortcuts within JavaScript. So here's one example. That doesn't work. Here's an example that we went over so far earlier. To do the calculation. Oh. Click on a paragraph, it disappears. I can use my eyes as an excuse on that one. I didn't read the screen completely. Now, we all know how to do this, or we should know how to do this in JavaScript, but we can do a little bit of a shortcut for this syntax in jQuery. So let's look at the examples. Why not open it? Oh, it's an untrusted file. Okay, again, we have a library. All right, in this case, it's our jQuery minimized JavaScript file. And we can hot link to them like this as well. You could also download it if you wanted to. All right, think about how you would do this in regular plain old JavaScript. And see that this would be something like, this would be how in the past we've added functions to a particular event. So when the page is ready, that's what anything with a $sign in front of it is a jQuery expression. So when the document is ready, perform this function. If you click on something with a class of disappear, fade it out. If you click button restore, fade it in. If you click on something that says you can't click on this, no disappear, then you get the error message, I told you so. So like a line like this, we could do that in JavaScript very easily. That would be document .get element by ID. So that line here is the equivalent of that. This is sort of our version of get element by ID, but it does more than IDs. We can select elements to get a certain function based on class name. So .disappear, for example, relates to anything that has assigned a class of disappear to it. So when we click anything that has a class of disappear to it, that thing that we clicked on fades out. If we click on the button to restore, then it calls this to fade it, those disappearing things back in. You don't have to use jQuery. jQuery just makes things, if you take the time to learn it, just takes things and makes it simpler. Well, I bet we're going to have a rainbow. Because it's bright outside and it's raining very hard. All right, anyhow, sorry for that little distraction. Okay, there's a nice tutorial in where else, W3 Schools. You can see more stuff of how to do in jQuery. And you can take the time to read that. This might be a link to an earlier version. That's the wrong thing. I don't want that one. It's something we used to use in this class. jQuery tutorial, that's the one I want. And we saw something like this already. Document ready function. So when the page loads, when the page is ready, make all the paragraph, when you click on it, make the paragraph disappear. My example is just a variation of that with just a few more stuff in there. Now, you don't have to use jQuery, but some of the things that we do in JavaScript, like when we get around to doing Ajax, some of them are done very cleanly in jQuery. And we've if I do jQuery Ajax, well, this doesn't make any sense now, but at the time, you'll see a simpler way. We'll go over the plain old JavaScript version of how to do it. Then we'll look at, then you can look at a jQuery example, how to do it to maybe make your code a little cleaner, a little more understandable. All right, next week we will begin with server-side coding and PHP. So this has been the semester for me having medical difficulties. And I apologize for that because I know I've been missing a fair amount of days. And I'm grateful that I have the videos from other semesters, and I hope that doesn't cause too much confusion. But I won't be here again in 2 weeks. I'm having cataract surgery because, as I've mentioned, my vision is not very good right at this point in time. It's good enough to drive, and I mean, I can see the screen, but it's not as good as it could be. So I'm having cataract surgery on, I think, the 28th of October. So I'm going to post a few weeks ahead. I imagine I'll be back the next Monday. All right. But again, I've never had cataract surgery before. I'm not sure exactly how long it takes to recover. So I'm going to post a few weeks ahead in class so that you can take the time to watch. You can take the time to review the material if I'm not available or whatever. All right, that's all I had today. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll see you over in lab.